You can think of it as your life ending, or you can think of your life beginning again. Lots of people will give you negative vibes. Just ignore them, because you can do whatever you want to do if you put your mind to it.
In a restaurant, you wouldn't notice. I mean, you really wouldn't notice.
At 11, you don't have that many plans. I wasn't concerned with anything other than could I play football again. So if there's an optimum time to have a bomb accident, about 11's about the time. When I was 11 years old, my parents took me to Ivanhoe Beacon, which is a National Trust ground. But in the war, a lot of people don't know that it was a mortar range. I was a terrific runner at the time, and I, having climbed the beacon, looked down into the farmland, and on the fence there was a very peculiar object. I thought it was an old rusty tin can. So I ran down to it, picked it up, and it was so heavy I dropped it, and they heard it 7 miles away. But it didn't actually knock me out. I can remember my father talking to me, but I suppose the most fateful thing that occurred to me was on the beacon at a very short distance away was a doctor, Dr. Pinkerton, and his wife, who was a nurse. Both had seen service in the war. They heard the explosion, knew exactly what it was, and went into action and saved me. And I would not be here today if it wasn't for them. The 2.5 years after I was injured, I went from hospital to hospital. My mode of transport at that point was a wheelchair, and of course wheelchairs can be raced. So I actually had my first driving, and only driving ban I might say, because I was racing with a young guy next to me with a wheelchair when we went down the track, other people called it a corridor, and we got to a very tight left-hand hairpin, and I hit a Formula One trolley coming the other way actually and knocked a very pretty nurse over and got my first ban. They took the wheelchair away and I had to be pushed everywhere after that.
I knew David almost from the day he went to school. He went to Hemel Grammar, and we've been pals all the time. Marilyn, his wife, also went to Hemel Grammar, as you probably know, and we were sort of a gang of pals all the way through. He was always well known because he was on This Is Your Life and things like that.
Sir or madam, whoever you are, wherever you are, today is your day, tonight's your night. This is your life.
I was called down to John Robinson's study at Hemel Grammar School and walked into a bank of lights and cameras and Eamon Andrews standing there doing This Is Your Life. They pick you up from home and take you to the studios, and of course you see all your friends, and the sister who looked after me in hospital, Douglas Bader, Freddie Mills from boxing, a whole load of celebrities there at the time, and it was just good fun. And of course my future wife, Marilyn.
I knew of David because everybody in the area knew about his accident, because it was a local scandal that somebody had been blown up while on a picnic trip. Nobody really thought of him as being disabled, and I didn't really, but when it came to our getting engaged, my mother was quite concerned. She could see in the future it could be difficult being married to a disabled person, so she was concerned for me.
When I was in hospital, my uncle Frank came along with a wheelchair, popped me in it and took me to Silverstone. We got into the paddock, I went on the start grid, I met Sterling Moss, Mike Hawthorne, they sat me in a Formula One car. I had a ball, and just one sniff of Castrol R and I was hooked for life.
I think it took him something like 20, 25 years to get the the licence.
It took me 30 years to get my licence, and I was turned down 14 times.
I think lesser men would have given up, but he didn't, and he's fantastic. And no question, he's an inspiration. He's a legend in motor racing.
I got involved with the British Motorsport Association for the Disabled simply because I was continually turned down for my motor racing licence. And in fact, I took over the organisation and negotiated with the MSA to change the rules, and it took me literally 30 years to do so. My last full race was at Brands Hatch in a Legend, and on the first lap there were 34 of us going into the bottom bend at Brands when the leader went off the track, kept his foot on the floor, went round on the grass and came through the centre of the pack. And I was one of the cars that he hit, and there was 3 of us written off and 7 cars in a major pile-up. I wasn't hurt, my wallet was scarred, and my wife said, "That's enough, I think you should retire now." And I think the bank manager agreed with her.
Wouldn't surprise me at all if he doesn't pick up his boots again. He had a go in a Volvo only a few weeks ago.
Whenever I talk to any disabled people, I always tell them there are 2 things that they have to do. They have to keep fit, and they have to keep their weight level. Because if you put on too much weight, you're going to sink into the legs, your stumps will get sore, you will simply not be able to walk properly. Getting in a letter to ask whether or not you would accept an MBE was quite a surprise. I think I made the decision in 2 or 3 seconds. I was very proud to receive that.
And he received his award from the Queen herself, so it was even more exciting.
He's good at everything, really. Simple as that. And long may continue.
He carried on and did everything as much as any normal person could, and he had a huge personality that nobody really thought of him as being disabled.
People would say to me, "Oh, you can't dance." Of course I can dance. I can't swim, and now I swim 4 kilometres a week. If you're injured like I was, then there are limitations. Take those limitations into account, then forget them, and then get on with your life. And that's what I did.